are you doing?
Yeah. Oh, I just get so excited when I remember that you exist.
Stop. I love it. Stop. You're the best. I love you so much.
Welcome back. This is Masou After School, episode 3, where we are going to be delving deeper into the subjects that Masou After School will be tackling. Um, and so, just as a little reminder, Masou After School has two main purposes that I've said in previous videos, but I'll repeat them here. Um, one of the main purposes we talked about in episode 2, which is to be a job where employees are cared for through dignified wages, generous PTO, and a full-time 4-day, 32-hour work week. So if that sounds interesting to you, please check out episode number 2. For this episode, we're going to delve into my second purpose for Masou After School, which is to be a safe after-school environment where members can use art, play, and conversation to learn about progressive subjects such as mindfulness, leadership, relationships, environmental justice and sustainability, and DEI and activism. So we're just going to talk about those things today with my guest, Mr. Bentley. How do you
Hello.
want, how do you want them to know you? What name do you want to use?
Bentley is totally fine. I'm totally fine with Bentley. Yeah.
So this is Bentley. I met Bentley when I was a freshman in high school. We were about to go to like this school trip to Australia together, but unfortunately Bentley couldn't go. But we met like during the beginning stages of that, uh, and then we would cross paths in high school via Key Club, and we volunteered at some camps together as well. And I just feel like Bentley has always been super consistently kind, super consistently himself. And, I was just so happy to ask Bentley to be be one of my board members for Masou After School. And he kindly said yes to me, and I'm so grateful. Um,
Excitedly, I would say. Excitedly said yes.
yes, because we had our first board meeting yesterday.
hmm It was a
Yeah.
fantastic time. Yeah.
Oh my God, so good. I felt so challenged by y'all, but honestly, in a really beautiful way. Like, I welcome it. I need it, because I feel I'm a firm believer that I can only see my perspective. I can't, and, we need to be in teamwork with other people because other people can see other perspectives, and I think that's all really
Yeah.
valuable. And I feel like we
Yes.
made a lot of progress in our last meeting.
You did.
One of the things that we made progress in is that we talked about the subjects that Masou After School would delve into. And I kind of just wanted to like go through those subjects today and just like have a conversation and get our thoughts about everything.
Totally.
Okay, so the first subject is mindfulness. And with each subject, I also kind of have a description that we were also voting on. So we were voting on the subject and we were voting on the description. So for mindfulness, the description that we voted on was nurturing the relationship with body, mind, and emotion. So this one was really tricky because originally I had wrote nurturing the relationship with body, death, spirit, and universe. And my board members basically all told me that the words death, spirit, universe were all kind of problematic. So we had to kind of pivot from those words. Do you remember us talking about that yesterday?
Yeah, yeah. And it's not that they were problematic. It's challenging understanding the world that we're in and the people that are in this world and just how they perceive everything. And so and I think I mentioned this yesterday, is just sometimes we have to put ourselves in a mindset where we understand how people are going to be looking and the amount of time that we have to grab their attention to be like, oh, this is totally something I want to do. And just there's just some people that aren't as open-minded sometimes and are not as critical of a descriptor as they could be. And so we want to make sure that, we are able to talk about those things and Masu at their school for sure. I think you will do a fantastic thing, a fantastic job of getting all those things in the curriculum. And it was just a matter of, advertisement and like making sure that if a parent sees something, there's not going to be anything there that's going to make them want to be like, I don't know about that. Just the best way to remove any barriers, just to keep people,
Yeah.
as easily, engaged with whatever material we put out there as possible. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, no, thank
Hmm.
you for that. I thought, okay, so there's a couple things because with Spirit and Universe, it seemed as though the board members felt as if it was just a little too, like, I guess, woo woo and too, like people could
Hmm.
put their own ideas onto what those two things are, and sometimes people don't have the best relationship with those words, and it could
Hmm.
be triggering for them. But I thought it was very fascinating that we were so I loved all the conversation we were having about death and
Hmm.
why we chose to remove that word, but we still all kind of agreed that it is a good topic to talk about.
Yes, definitely, definitely.
Yeah, right. Like I feel like the death thing was really interesting to me because in my mind, but also this is after me doing years of inner work, like I
Hmm.
feel like it's such a common thing that happens to everyone that affects everyone,
Yeah.
like plenty of kids who have dealt with death in the family or death of a pet or death of a friend. And we also, I feel like that's one of us as human beings, our things that we have to figure out in our life is how we
Yeah.
cope with our own death and our own mortality. And I think that it's such an important topic to discuss with kids and to have a safe space for them to talk about it, especially if parents aren't comfortable with them talking about it at home. But
Hmm.
like to y'all's point, if they're not comfortable talking with it with their kids at home, then they probably wouldn't be interested in like seeing that in a flyer.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the challenge is being able to meet people where they are, even if you want them to stretch their limits. It's just like in that very moment, it's not always feasible to be able to do that with just some people that we, are trying to grab. Um, but no, you're so right with that whole conversation about death. It was very fascinating, and even I mentioned this yesterday as well. Like my experience with death, I feel like I'm still trying to figure out how to grieve properly with a lot of different family members and a few friends that I've lost over the years. And it, I don't know, it's hard. You feel like you kind of deal with it, and then something happens, and you're like, hmm, I don't feel anything. Is this good? Is this healthy? Like I don't know.
Mhm.
It's a challenge. It's a challenge. So again, to be able to talk about this, the topic of death and mortality and life in general, with 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 young students, I think is a really valuable thing. That is, I'm glad that Masu at their school will be, kind of tackling that with its clientele. Yeah.
One of the questions that arose for me was, with Miss Sue after school, and this is something I thought about in the beginning stages of me coming up with the idea, was
Hmm.
that I did want to make it very clear that we are teaching progressive subjects. And I think it's important to use that word because I do want conservative parents to see that as like a indicator as to
Yeah.
kind of topics that we might be delving into. Uh,
Hmm.
and but it's and part of me, like I guess the like angry liberal part of me is kind of like, well, I don't want them to be in my club anyway, But it is kind of sad when the kids who might not have anything to do with that are
Hmm.
negatively affected by that. So
Exactly.
it made me think a lot more about like I guess trying to be inclusive to the more conservative folks out there, especially since we are in Nevada. Nevada is a very purple state. We are constantly a swing state. And so we really do have like an equal amount of conservative and liberal voices here. Um, I don't know. It's still something that I'm like wrapping my head around and trying to figure out how we can be inclusive without, you know, being ex like without excluding certain minority groups, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it's really hard. I mean, first off, you have to figure out we have to figure out like what is the target audience. And the thing is with education, I feel like the target audience, we should always think it's everyone, you know? But it's hard to do when it's an after school program. It's just like, hey, like what do we want to market this as? And with so many different opinions and so many different experiences in Las Vegas with regards to all different types of identities, like you're in an awesome place to be able to have different voices and different experiences and different um people from all these different kind of backgrounds in one space, and that is where I think true learning happens. And so when you have people from different backgrounds who don't think the same, that's when you're just kind of like when you said before, you were being challenged, and it's because we don't all have the same perspective. And so I think it's very important to have all these different identities come together and kind of discuss these topics in a progressive manner. um it's just a matter of how do we get them there. So
Hmm.
I think that's the challenge, which
Yeah.
I think we'll figure out. We will figure out.
Yes, yes. And then like you said, like there's a element of like trusting the process of just seeing, feeling it out and seeing what works.
Hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So the next topic is leadership. I feel like,
Uh
especially because my master's that I'm getting in 5 weeks is in urban leadership, I feel like
huh.
it just makes a lot of sense for us to go
Yeah, of
into
course.
it. And also for me, like I feel like I see leadership everywhere. Like I see it in parenting, I see it in teaching, I see it in
Yes,
the
it
workplace,
is
at home.
everywhere.
It's everywhere. So, it can really be applied. And then the description is for leadership, nurturing the relationship with power and ego. Um,
Hmm.
so I wanted to ask you, why do you think it's important to nurture the relationship with power and with ego? And for kids to learn that.
Hmm. So I think it's important because when you have, well, first off, those words, I love that you choose those words as the descriptor because they are kind of embedded in leadership, but we don't necessarily think of it immediately in that way. And so it's almost like we want to destigmatize those two words, because if you're doing them in the proper way, and if you're educated about what true power is and what ego is, it it just kind of starts to it redefines leadership for you as a whole. And so one thing that I love about leadership is that it is interdisciplinary. And so the other subjects that we're going to dive into, um, they're all kind of intertwined. And with leadership, you have to understand all these different subjects in order to be able to see the world in a certain way and figure out how can I make a difference in this specific manner, or even just thinking how can I make a difference in five different manners, or whatever. If we're even going past the subjects of Masou at their school, just how do I see the world, how do I understand where I fit in it, and how I can make a difference with the people around me together, building community and all that kind of stuff. And so to be able to have an after school program that embeds leadership into its curriculum is, I think, very important, because that's kind of just what we need to be teaching students is, how are you going to make a difference? Like there are so many things socially, environmentally, going on in our world. And if we don't start from the very bottom, and by bottom, I mean, right when they're young, if we
Mhm.
don't start from there, I don't know where we're going to end up. We have to have our students understand from the very get-go that everything they do matters, and that everything that they learn is and can be applicable to helping make this world a better place. It's just a matter of getting right support, knowing your place in your community, and the different you know resources you have to help make a change around you. So No, I love that that is a part of the curriculum, and I'm excited to see the different activities, and just things and the fun and the play that the students do that involve leadership.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And really quick, I just wanted to tell my audience that now that we've voted on these subjects, the next step is for me to start creating the curriculum and creating the pilot program, pilot season curriculum. So I'll be sure to share as I go, my process with that as well. But we're going to start here at the topics and the descriptions. So for the next topic was relationships. Oh,
Hmm.
was relationships. Nurturing the relationship with family, friends, partners, and more. And so with this one, it was interesting because I had originally named this subject intimate relationships, but we felt as though my board members felt as though that word was a little bit too sensitive to use. Um, what do you think about that, about the use of that word? And what
Yeah.
intimate relationships means to you? Because when I hear intimate relationships, I'm not thinking about just romantic sexual relationships. I'm thinking about
Hmm.
just close relationships in
Just
general.
close relationships in general, and I think I totally agree and understand with that as well. It I think it is. This is challenging, and this goes back to the other subjects as well. We're in a place in society where society has one way of thinking of things, and it may or may not be wrong or right. It may not be what it actually means, but we just always kind of understand what the majority of people will think when they see a certain word or certain phrase or action, whatever. And
Mhm.
so we're in a challenging place where it's like, hey, how do we change the meaning of this word? How do we let everyone understand, like, when this word is existent, it doesn't necessarily always mean sexual or non-platonic. It's one of those words, I think, that, and especially for kids, they take everything to the extreme. And I'm not gonna lie, I don't really know how many students are familiar with what intimate means, but I do wonder, like, where their brain kind of goes at this point in their development. And so I think that's kind of where our head was. It's like, when a student sees it and when a parent sees it, like, where does their head go when they think about it? And will that be a barrier for them to move forward with Masou at their school?
Yeah.
And I think, again, part of the process and the curriculum will be redefining that for the students and for the family, because the students will go back and talk about the stuff with their family. It's like, oh no, we learned this and this, and then the family member, and they might be like, oh wait, they just used the word intimate, but that not in the way that I would have expected them to use it. And it
Mhm.
sounds very intelligent the way they're talking about it. And then they're like, let me call Miss Nicole and be like, hey, I'm just, just to double check and be like, oh my gosh, like, I love that that's how you're. So, hopefully that's the kind of conversation that students and family members can be having at home once they leave the program. Just being able to reframe and redefine some of these words and concepts for them. So that's
Yeah.
kind of how I feel about it.
Yeah, and it also brings up to the idea of meeting people where they are, with
Hmm.
regards to the language that they use and they understand, um, but still trying to find that balance and that dance of also pushing the boundary a little bit,
Exactly, exactly.
certain words. And I definitely need help with finding that balance because my nature is just to be like, I'm gonna just use the word and y'all can deal with it.
Hmm.
Y'all can deal with your feelings about
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Um,
Exactly.
and especially if it's something I really believe in, like really, okay, quick side note, quick story.
Yeah, yeah.
Personally, okay, so I am a huge advocate for the queer community. I love the queer community. I love queer people. I think there's so much
Mhm.
intersection with queerness and like Black feminists and the way that
Hmm.
we're perceived in the world. And it's just, I'm always trying to get my advocacy up. And one
Yeah.
of the things that I personally do in my life is I refer to my partner as my partner. What I've noticed at my last job that I worked at was that most people, when I use that
Hmm.
word, assume that I'm queer,
Assume.
assume
Yep.
that I'm in a queer relationship.
Mhm.
And I'm like, my part of honestly, I don't care. I really don't. I think it's kind of like I like kind of like the mystery.
The mysteriousness of it.
And then I like to surprise
Mysteriousness.
them when I show them a picture and they're like, oh, you guys just look like a normal hetero couple. Um,
Yeah.
I thought you were with a woman, like, or whatever. Or I thought this. And no one, it's not that people always are telling me what they're thinking, but
Hmm.
you just kind of tell. And so in
Yeah.
my thing, I'm like,
Perfect.
so should I use that word because most people assume it means this, or should I use that word because it's helping to advocate for queer people more, right?
Hmm.
So that they feel less afraid of using that word, right? If I am a
Yeah.
straight person, I'm using it, and I'm in a straight, you know what I'm saying? Like I feel
Exactly.
it's bigger than me, and I want to advocate for queer people in that way. And
Exactly.
it's a word that I resonate with more. So that's like a personal decision that I make, and so I do struggle with like knowing when to pull back on that. And
Yeah,
it's
and I don't want to say that you should ever pull back on it. It is, I think it is a time and place type deal because you're embedding it in your life. You're embedding it in your lifestyle and you're making sure that people around you understand that and can learn from that too. And that's important. And I think that's something that we should strive to kind of teach the students. It's like pronouns. Let's get used to that. Like when we do an icebreaker, like, hey, when you're introducing, say your name, where you're from, your pronoun, what grade you're in. Yeah, yeah. We want to embed all that kind of stuff in there. And that all happens through experience and through living and learning and all that. And I think it's just one of those things. Sometimes like time and place as far as I'm trying I was going somewhere with this and now it's like
oh,
it's going away.
but
No, you're fine.
that's what
You're fine.
yeah, that's what I was saying was like I'm learning the context of like
Got
when
it.
I
Yes.
can, do that. I
Exactly.
really
Yeah.
struggle because I just want to be authentically me all the time.
Yes. Yes.
But, I also am empathetic to just using the language that people understand and trying to work with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're killing it.
Did you
We're
lose your
killing
train
it.
of
You're
thought?
killing it. It's all good. Yeah, I empathize with you there because I had to do the same thing with some of my students in middle school band. So yeah.
Okay, and then the next topic is environmental justice and sustainability,
Hmm.
nurturing the relationship with plants, animals, and the environment. Um, so for me, out of all of our subjects, this is the one that I'm personally, I guess, most intimidated by, or I feel like
Okay.
not as experienced in.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, I like my plants.
Yeah.
I like the idea of being like a nature girly.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not out here camping for real or surviving
Yeah.
for real, or I'm planting things with my own fingers. Like I got my nails done. So I feel
Yeah.
like a certain kind of disconnect. I'm not like eating the food that like. I feel a little
Hmm.
bit disconnected from this. Although the reason why I picked this as a topic is because I do feel very passionately about this idea that human beings are like, we are not the most important thing on the planet.
I'm
There's a
starting to get
lot
that into my head. Yeah.
there's a lot of human supremacy in the way that
Hmm.
we operate, especially as Americans. Um, and in the way that we
Very
like
much so.
even talk about plants and animals, like there's so much human supremacy. And I just there's I'm just feel very called to kind of have a space where we can kind of get out of ourselves and stop thinking about
Hmm.
ourselves and stop being narcissistic with our own species and start
Yeah.
considering other the whole balance of the nature. So where do you think we should go with regards to environmental justice and sustainability when we're talking
Hmm.
to kids? Like what do you think we should talk about?
Well, before I get on to what we should talk about, I want to kind of I want to call a fact to you being vulnerable with saying I don't know as much about this as I could, especially in order to be able to create create curriculum on and all that kind of stuff. And that's really important because as educators, we should be understanding, and our students should understand that the learning never stops and there's always something to learn. And so to be able to say that you have done the research and you have found resources and sources and all the things in order to be able to talk educatedly about sustainability and plants and animals and the environment. I think that's going to be very, very cool to be able to do that research and learn about it and then give it back to the community. Um, but so I think, like you say, like we need to understand that it's not just about us. Um, and sometimes I mean that in two different ways. Like I mean that it's not just about you and your specific family. It's not just about you and your school. It's not just about you and your city or your country. It is about all of us, first of all, which, again, like you said, it's very human centric. But to expand upon that, it's also, again, not about us. It is about the the beings that were here before us. It's about the air that we breathe. It's about the plants that if they weren't here, we would not be able to be here, because of the food chain, the food cycle. Like it is about every single thing in, around, and under this planet. And so just to be able, and there are cultures that, I think maybe aren't as progressed as we are with technology and whatnot that still, I think, kind of do that. And that might be a great place to resources or research is like, how are these communities living and how are they taking care of the people around them or the thing that how are they taking care of life around them? And when I say life, I mean all life, so using those as like different case studies and saying, hey, think about what you do in your life and what's something that you have learned about these peoples and that you can maybe take back home and say, hey, mom, dad, whoever, I learned about this, and I love the idea of being able to do such and such. Start in that kind of way.
Oh my God, Bentley.
Because
Sorry.
oh no, you're fine, you're
I
fine. No,
love that
I
you
think it's a good.
I I love that you say that because when I was thinking
Mhm.
about this subject yesterday, that was the only direction I could really think
Really, I
was to
love it. That's
go
awesome.
into the indigenous route. Personally,
Yes.
I've been very fascinated with the indigenous Paiutes who live in Las Vegas or who live, you know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
um, especially as a descendant of slaves, I really do wish there was more opportunity for Black folks and indigenous folks to like band together and work together. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I've been very interested in learning more about the Paiutes and the people who lived indigenously in this Mojave Desert. And
Hmm.
that was like something that I was thinking about. That was like the only thing that I was kind of
There
like,
you go.
I was like tickling me
Yeah.
a little. So I love that you say that to try
Hmm.
to maybe
And
look
and
culture.
it's one of those things that ties into back to the first one of mindfulness because all of that is mindfulness in their culture. It ties into social justice and activism and diversity because you're learning about other cultures. Yeah, again, I love how intertwined all of these subjects are. It makes for fantastic curriculum and experiences that the students are going to have, I think. Yeah.
Man, okay. Love that. That's like so helpful. The last subject is diversity, equity, inclusion, and activism. Um,
Hmm.
I did get like a DEI certification in October.
Okay.
So
All right.
technically,
Well,
I'm like DEI certified professional.
awesome. Very,
Um,
very cool.
but I feel like this was just really important and really like, mm, it, it's just like a really big topic right now, I think, in history.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, diversity, equity, inclusion, and activism, nurturing the relationship with community and humanity. Um,
Hmm.
oh, I wrote here, shout out to Camp Anytown, because you volunteered at
Yes.
Camp Anytown, and I used to be, yeah, and you were one of their kids that they helped. And so was I in high school.
Hmm.
And this is like kind of like what they talk about a lot, or they did a lot of activities on like
Hmm.
racism and sexism and
Yeah.
identity.
They
And
were doing DEI before DEI. Like,
they were, and
yeah.
yeah, shout out to them. I definitely take a lot of inspiration from them. Um,
Hmm.
what's one nugget about DEI and activism that is crucial for middle schoolers to know? What do you think?
I don't want to think too hard about it, and that's not to say that it shouldn't be thought hard about. I just know my brain, and just if I keep thinking, I don't know where I'll go. The first thing that came to my brain though was empathy. I think empathy encompasses so many different things. Empathy encompasses being able to look at things with a different lens. It encompasses being able to listen
Mm,
instead of wanting to be heard.
mm,
Um, it encompasses understanding where people are coming from, who they came from, when they came. It encompasses so many different things that I think lead to changes in character. And character is something that is good character is something that is hard to come by these days. And I think when someone doesn't have good character or understanding or empathy of what's truly happening around them, that's when stuff starts to go down. I don't know. Insert idiom here. That's when stuff goes sideways. Yeah, sideways. That's what I was trying to say. Um, and so I don't know. I feel very strongly about empathy and how much it ties into our daily lives. Even with plants and animals, like having the empathy to understand, like, oh my gosh, this plant needs water, it needs sunshine, and it needs enough oxygen, like CO2, like just yeah, empathy. I think can is a great thing to base DEI off of because it's something that in some way, shape, or form we can all understand.
yes. Yeah,
Unless
that's really
psychopaths.
good.
But
I love that. No, I love that you said that. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think that's a really good place to start
Mhm,
with middle schoolers, especially. Like, yeah, that's so good. With so it's nurturing the relationship with community and humanity.
mhm,
Community for me is something I've been personally thinking about a lot lately. Just
mhm,
I've I feel like I'm more attuned to the fact that community is essential for us, like food and water. It's like essential
mhm.
for our brains, for our survival,
Yeah,
for us to keep
we
our
are social beings.
yeah, and so
Yep.
and ever since like moving into like my first home, I'm trying to like invite people over and like
Yeah.
trying to do a book club or like whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just think those are skills that, especially as Americans, we don't learn really. Like we're so individualistic in our culture
Yes. Oh
and
my
in the
God.
way
Yes.
that
And I hate
our
that so much. I hate that so much.
and in the way that a lot of our classrooms are structured, like it's so individual. And so I feel like really called to like try to embed the idea and value of community for sure. So yeah, so those are the five subjects that we're going to be starting with for Masou After School.
Okay.
And our idea for the pilot is to test each subject with the kids, see what sticks, see which ones we want to stick with which ones we might let go, how we want to
Yeah.
reframe. But this is just how we're starting. So my last question for you, Bentley, is if you were in middle school, which subject would most interest you?
Ooh.
So we have mindfulness,
Um,
leadership, relationships, environmental justice and sustainability, DEI, and activism.
Got you. See, I'm trying to think of me versus middle school me. Like, what do
Mhm.
I think middle school me would want to do, or what would actual middle school me? Um, I'm gonna say for me, actually, especially at a certain point, I think leadership. If I'm talking like eighth grade, seventh grade me, I think leadership would be the one that I would be really interested in learning about. And then if it were Sixth grade me, honestly, I do not know. I don't remember that boy at all.
Mhm.
But
Oh.
yeah, I think that leadership, just kind of when I first started to learn about the word and be a part of different programs and activities that were, leadership based, it started to kind of build my confidence and give me a little bit more in like my school life. Um, and I mean, it led on to today. Like I talk about leadership with my students all the time in middle school. And so yeah, I think that's just something that I probably would have wanted to do. And would have been really excited to learn about for an after school program. So yeah,
Mhm.
leadership.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. Okay. Yeah, I actually the more I think about it, I was in a lot of different kind of leadership programs. After
Yeah,
I like
yeah.
put in them in like middle school and high school and
Hmm.
stuff. I didn't realize how like it was almost everywhere in a lot of
Yeah,
ways. I think I would have been most interested to learn about relationships just because
got you.
I find it to be very interesting, fascinating, like interpersonal relationships. I find it to be complex and challenging. Um,
Hmm.
so I would have loved to talk about that for sure. Um, okay. I don't think I have anything else for us today. Oh,
Oh,
oh.
it's good. I was
Finley said he's on 3%. So that means we gotta go.
It's all good.
That's so
Yeah,
funny.
Nicole, thank you so much for having me. I loved this conversation. It was so stimulating, and it makes me even more excited than I was from yesterday's board meeting, just to see all of this come into fruition and just, see all the experiences the students are going to be having. And they are under fantastic hands with someone who is very passionate and loving and also caring. When you were saying I was caring, like you're caring. But just someone who truly wants to make a difference. They couldn't have anyone better that is behind their backs, wanting them to have a great experience after school. So I'm very excited to see how this all goes and how it starts to change the world and how it changes Las Vegas and who knows Nevada, the country. Who knows where this will go? So I'm very excited. Yes.
Oh my God, Bentley, you're so sweet. You just gave me
Stop it.
so much serotonin right now. I'm like,
I'm glad you deserve it.
girl, I need it. So I appreciate that.
Of
All
course, of
right,
course.
y'all. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're so glad that you're here, and we'll talk to you in our next episode. Bye.
See you. Bye.